Hello everyone, and welcome to the Fictional Vortex. So we are back with an interesting movie on what if Naruto was reincarnated as a Saiyan god, the true heir of planet Vegeta, Naruto x Vados x Caulifla, Dragon Ball Super. But before we start, I just want to remind you to please subscribe to my channel and hit the like button if you enjoy my content. Let's start the story. Chapter 1. A Soul Adrift, a God Reborn. Silence was the first sensation. Not the quiet of a sleeping village or the hushed stillness of a forest at dusk, but a profound and absolute absence of sound. It was a pressureless void that swallowed vibration, a silence so complete it felt like a physical presence against the eardrums. The second sensation was nothingness. He felt no ground beneath him, no air against his skin, no pull of gravity anchoring him to a plane of existence. He simply was, a point of consciousness suspended in an endless, sterile medium. Slowly, sight bled into his awareness. Below, if such a concept had meaning here, stretched an infinite expanse of immaculate white. It was not snow, nor sand, nor cloud, but a solid, featureless plain that absorbed all texture and detail. Above, a seamless dome of the purest black, a starless firmament that offered no constellations, no moon, no hint of cosmic geography. The line where the white met the black was a horizon of impossible sharpness. A perfect division of everything and nothing. He tried to draw a breath and found the action unnecessary. He tried to feel his own heartbeat and found only a placid, rhythmic thrum of energy that was not biological. He looked down at his hands. They were his, yet not. The palms were broader, the fingers longer, the skin free of the calluses and scars earned over a lifetime of throwing shuriken and kunai. This body felt new, unused. Potent. Memory, when it came, was not a gentle stream but a violent, fragmented storm. The searing, incandescent roar of a Resenshu. Raiken tearing through the fabric of reality. The weight of a world on his shoulders. The cold, indifferent eyes of a goddess who was more monster than myth. Sakura's desperate cry. Sasuke's grim, determined silence. The acrid taste of blood and ozone. He remembered the final, desperate gamble. Not a clash of power, but an offering. He had become the vessel, the key, and the lock. He had woven every last shred of his own life force, and that of the tailed beasts within him, into a final, ultimate sealing jutsu. It was a technique designed to contain not a person, but a concept, Kagaia's dimension-rending power. The price was absolute, annihilation, the feeling of his soul unraveling, thread by thread, into the great, silent tapestry of oblivion. He had died. He was certain of it. So what, then, was this? You were correct in your assessment. The voice was not loud, yet it filled the infinite space without echo. It was calm, ancient, and carried a weight of authority that made the very concept of defiance seem absurd. From the seamless black above, a figure descended, not with a show of power, but with the simple grace of a falling leaf. He was small, almost childlike in stature, with pale blue skin. White hair swept up into a high tuft, and a serene, perpetually smiling face. He wore simple, elegant robes and carried a long staff topped with a floating blue ring. His eyes, however, were anything but simple. They were violet pools of cosmic knowledge, holding a gaze that saw not just the young man before him, but the tattered, heroic soul within, the echoes of his past life, and the latent potential of his new one. Naruto remained silent, his mind, honed by years of shinobi discipline, racing. He assessed the being. There was no hostility, no killing intent. In fact, there was almost nothing, a placid ocean of energy so deep and vast that trying to gauge its bottom was like a drop of water trying to comprehend the sea. This being was on a scale he couldn't have imagined, far beyond Kagaia. Beyond anything he had ever known. Panic was useless. Observation was everything. You are Naruto Uzumaki. The being stated, not as a question, but as a confirmation. You were the child of prophecy. The savior of a vibrant but troubled world. You lived a life of extraordinary hardship and achieved a victory of unparalleled significance. You died a hero. Who are you? Naruto's voice was raspy, unfamiliar in his own ears. It was deeper, smoother, lacking the boisterous edge it once had. I am the Grand Priest, the being replied with a gentle inclination of his head. And this is my domain. A place outside the flow of time and the confines of the multiverse. Naruto processed this. Multiverse. The word implied his world was just one of many. It was a concept both humbling and staggering. Why am I here? I died. I should be gone. Ordinarily, you would be, the Grand Priest agreed. Your soul was set to dissipate, its energy returning to the cosmos from which it was formed. However, your soul is unique. It possesses a resonance, a foundational signature that we believed was lost to eons. An echo of a beginning that has long since been forgotten. The Grand Priest gestured with one hand, and the empty space between them shimmered. An image formed, a primitive, savage planet orbiting a crimson star. Giant, ape-like creatures roared at the heavens, their power brutal and untamed. This was planet Vegeta, long before its destruction. The ancestral home of the Saiyan race. A warrior people known for their ferocity, their lust for battle, and their transformative power. The image shifted, showing armored warriors conquering worlds, their cruelty efficient and absolute. They were a powerful but blunt instrument in the grand cosmic scheme. But this was not their only path. The Grand Priest continued, his voice taking on a narrative tone. Before the reign of kings and the thirst for conquest, there was a legend. A prophecy, of a Saiyan god, a being whose power was not born of rage or a thirst for destruction, but from a profound need to protect. A being whose ki was inherently creative, capable of nurturing life as easily as it could extinguish it. This legend was deemed a threat to the burgeoning warrior culture. It was suppressed, its followers exiled, its bloodline believed to be eradicated. The image shimmered again, focusing on a single, ancient figure, a Saiyan with gentle eyes and a powerful, yet serene, aura of golden light. The soul of this progenitor, this prime Saiyan, was not destroyed. It was cast out, adrift on the cosmic tides. Too resilient to fade completely. It journeyed through the membranes between universes, weakening with every light year, until it found a compatible vessel in a distant world. A newborn child, an orphan who carried a similar burden of loneliness and a fierce, unyielding will to protect those he cared for. Your soul, Naruto Uzumaki, is the reincarnation of that lost legacy. Naruto stared at the image, at his own hands. Then back at the Grand Priest. It was an impossible, ludicrous story. And yet, he felt the truth of it resonating deep within the core of his new being. The energy it thrummed where his heart should be. It felt vast, wild, but not malevolent. It felt like his own sage mode, amplified a million times over, a connection to life itself. When you performed your final act, the Grand Priest explained, the sheer force of your will and the nature of your sacrifice caused your soul's true signature to flare like a supernova. It was a beacon we could not ignore. The multiverse faces a subtle, but pervasive, threat, a creeping silence that targets potential itself. The gods of destruction are ill-suited to combat it, as their power is of a similar, albeit opposing, nature. A creative force is required. A protector. The Grand Priest smiled, a gesture that held the weight of galaxies. And so, we intervened. We gathered the scattered threads of your soul and gave it a vessel worthy of its heritage. You have been reborn, Naruto Uzumaki, as the true heir of planet Vegeta, a Saiyan god in flesh and spirit. A second figure appeared beside the Grand Priest, her arrival as silent and graceful as his. She was taller, with the same pale blue skin and white hair, but styled into a high, elegant ponytail. She held a similar staff and wore the serene, observant expression of her superior. Though her violet eyes held a spark of undisguised curiosity. This is my daughter, Vados, the Grand Priest said. She is the angel attendant to the god of destruction of Universe 6. The twin universe to the one that housed your original homeworld. She will be your guide and mentor as you acclimate to your new existence. Vados offered a slight, polite bow. It is a unique pleasure, Naruto Uzumaki. I have observed countless mortals across the ages, but I must confess, a reincarnated soul with your particular pedigree is a first. Her voice was a melodic, refined cadence that was both pleasant and utterly unreadable. Naruto felt her gaze upon him, an analytical sweep that was not judgmental, but deeply inquisitive. She was cataloging him, from the faint orang tint of his nascent aura to the shinobi-born readiness in his stance. Before your journey begins, the Grand Priest interjected, his tone shifting from informative to purposeful, there is the matter of a formality. Your soul has been given a new vessel, but it must resonate with its inherent nature. Your past life was defined by your choices. Your new life will be no different. You must demons. Trait that the will of the protector is truly your own, not merely an echo of a forgotten legend. The infinite white around them dissolved. In an instant, they stood in the gray, choked atmosphere of a dying world. The ground was cracked and barren, littered with the skeletal remains of desiccated forests and the rusted husks of crumbling cities. The sky was a sickly brown, and the air was thick with the stench of chemical blight and despair. In the distance, the sounds of battle raged, the percussive blasts of primitive energy weapons, the screams of the dying. This world is on the brink of self-annihilation. The Grand Priest's voice narrated, emanating from the poisoned air itself. Its people have squandered their resources and turned on one another in a final, desperate war for what little remains. They are beyond saving by conventional means. Two distinct paths materialized before Naruto as shimmering, ethereal visions. You are being presented with a choice, the Grand Priest explained. Your first act as a divine being. The path of order lies before you. We will grant you the power to instantly pacify this entire world. You can crush their armies, silence their dissent, and impose a perfect, lasting peace. You will be their God King, their absolute ruler. They will know no more war, no more suffering. But they will also know no more free will. Their world will be a perfectly ordered, beautiful, and lifeless garden. The vision of the first path showed the planet transformed. The wars ceased, the skies cleared, and the cities were rebuilt into sterile, uniform monuments. The people moved with purpose but without passion, their eyes vacant, their lives dictated by an unseen, benevolent tyrant. The second option is the path of sacrifice, the voice continued. Why? Oh, you can pour the very essence of your new life force, your primal God Ki, into the planet's dying core. This act will be anathema to your own being. It will drain you to the point of near extinction, leaving you as weak and vulnerable as a newborn for a significant period. The planet, however, will be revitalized. The soil will be rendered fertile, the waters purified, the atmosphere cleansed. You will give its people a second chance. A clean slate. But their hearts will remain unchanged. They will be free to rebuild their world in a new image, or to repeat their mistakes and destroy it once more. The vision of the second path showed a torrent of golden energy pouring from Naruto's body into the ground. It showed him collapsing, his form flickering and weak. But it also showed green shoots breaking through the cracked earth. It showed rain falling, clean and pure. It showed the faces of the warring people as they lowered their weapons, staring in shock and awe at the miracle unfolding around them. A single tear of hope tracing a path through the grime on a soldier's face. The visions faded, leaving Naruto standing amidst the desolation, the weight of the choice pressing down on him. Vados watched him, her staff held loosely in her hands, her expression unreadable but her focus absolute. This was the crucible. Was he a conqueror? A ruler who would impose his will for the greater good? Or was he a protector? A fool who would sacrifice everything for the mere chance that others might choose a better way? Naruto didn't need long to decide. He had seen this choice before, in a different form. He remembered Nagato's philosophy, born of unbearable pain, the belief that humanity could only understand peace through the shared experience of suffering, a peace enforced by the threat of overwhelming destruction. He remembered the long, dark history of his own world, a seemingly endless cycle of hatred and war. But he also remembered the moments that broke that cycle. His master, Jiraiya, believing in him. His father, Minato, trusting the future to him. The choice to forgive, to understand, to believe in the potential within others, even when they gave you every reason not to. Free will was messy. It was painful. It was the source of all conflict. But it was also the only thing that gave life meaning. A peace without choice wasn't peace, it was a cage. Without a word, Naruto closed his eyes. He reached inward, not for the familiar warmth of chakra, but for the vast, untamed ocean of cosmic energy that now defined him. He felt its incredible power, a force that could shatter moons and extinguish stars. And he let it go. He knelt, pressing one palm against the dead, cracked soil. A brilliant, golden aura erupted around him. Not with the explosive fury of a transformation, but with the gentle, life-giving radiance of a rising sun. The energy did not lash out, it poured downwards, a willing sacrifice. The pain was excruciating, a sensation of being hollowed out from the inside. It was 1,000 times worse than exhausting his chakra. It was the feeling of his very soul being siphoned away, his new divine existence being unmade almost as soon as it had been granted. His body trembled, and a raw cry was torn from his lips as the last reserves of his strength were ripped from him. And then, he felt it. Through his palm, he felt the planet's core stir from its toxic slumber. He felt the faintest pulse of a heartbeat that was not his own. The ground beneath him softened. A single blade of impossible green grass sprouted beside his hand. The simulation dissolved. He was back in the infinite white space, kneeling on the featureless floor, his body trembling violently. He was weak, weaker than he had ever been in his life. The vast ocean of power within him was now a shallow pond. The Grand Priest stood before him, his serene smile unchanged, yet his violet eyes held a deep and profound approval. "You resonate perfectly," he said simply. Naruto tried to push himself up, but his limbs wouldn't obey. He slumped forward, his vision blurring. Before he could hit the ground, a cool, slender staff was placed before him, barring his fall. He looked up to see Vados standing over him. Her polite, professional mask was gone, replaced by a look of genuine, unadulterated fascination. A small, almost imperceptible smile touched her lips. "A truly illogical, and utterly magnificent, choice," she murmured, her voice a soft melody. "To be given the power of a god and, as your very first act, choose to become mortal again, all for a world that wasn't even real." She offered him her free hand. "Come, Naruto Uzumaki. Your re-education is about to begin. It appears I have much to learn from you, as well." He looked at her outstretched hand, then into her ancient, curious eyes. This was it, the first step, leaving the last remnants of the elemental nations behind and stepping into a universe far grander and more dangerous than he could ever have imagined. With a final, weary effort, he took her hand. Her grip was cool, steady, and impossibly strong. Chapter 1 End. Chapter 2. The Crimson Star of Sadala. The transition was not like the body flicker technique of his past, nor the jarring spatial tears he had witnessed others use. Traveling with an angel was like watching the universe itself politely step aside. There was no gut-wrenching lurch or blinding flash, merely a serene, silent glide through an ocean of iridescent nebulae and rivers of nascent starlight. One moment, they were in the sterile infinity of the Grand Priest's domain, the next, reality was reassembling itself around them with a gentle sigh. Naruto leaned heavily on Vados' staff, the cool, smooth material a comforting anchor in the dizzying aftermath of his choice. The vast wellspring of power that had been his new birthright was now a quiet, shallow pool. He felt a profound, bone-deep exhaustion, a weariness that transcended the physical. "Regretting your grand gesture already?" Vados' melodic voice held a distinct note of amusement. "Most new deities spend their first millennia acquiring followers or building monuments to themselves. You chose to experience a near-total energy depletion. A novel approach to divinity, I must admit." "A monument is just a rock," Naruto replied, his own voice still feeling foreign to him. "And followers are just people. What's the point of either if you forget what it's like to have something to protect?" Vados' smile widened, though her eyes remained fixed on the swirling cosmos ahead. "An interesting philosophy. U.S. August that power is defined by the willingness to relinquish it. The gods of destruction would find that concept laughably absurd. Then they're not as smart as they think they are," he stated simply. The final veil of transit dissolved, and the new world hit him with the force of a physical blow. The silence was shattered by a cacophony of sound, the screech of alien predators, the rumble of shifting earth, and the distant, percussive thump-thump-thump of what sounded like continuous, gleeful explosions. They stood on a high, windswept mesa overlooking a sprawling, rugged landscape. The ground was a palette of ochre and burnt sienna, dominated by gravity-defying spires of rock that clawed at the sky like the petrified fingers of ancient giants. Strange, hardy vegetation, all thorns, thick husks, and vibrant, aggressive-looking flowers, clung to life in the crevices. Above, the sky was a chaotic masterpiece. 3 suns, one a brilliant white, one a deep, blood orange, and the third a smaller, violet dwarf, crawled across the heavens on different paths, casting a bizarre trio of sharp, overlapping shadows. The air itself felt alive, crackling with a wild, untamed energy that made the fine hairs on Naruto's arms stand on end. It was an aggressive, primal energy, but it felt distantly familiar, like the echo of a song he'd never heard but somehow knew the words to. "Welcome to Planet Sadala," Vados announced, gesturing with her staff. "Homeworld of the Saiyans of Universe 6. A bit more rustic than your previous home, I imagine." "It's loud," Naruto observed, his senses, still sharp from his shinobi training, being overwhelmed. "That is the nature of this place. The planet is rich in what mortals call fighting spirit. It encourages growth through conflict. It is why the Saiyans who evolved here are naturally more powerful, if somewhat less refined, than their counterparts from the destroyed planet Vegeta of Universe 7. As if on cue, a trio of Saiyans, identifiable by their black, spiky hair and restless energy, blasted past overhead, chasing a large, reptilian beast. They weren't flying with grace or precision, they were rocketing through the air, laughing maniaca. LLY as they launched indiscriminate ki blasts that blew huge chunks out of the surrounding mesas. Naruto watched them, his expression unreadable. He saw it instantly. The wasted energy, the lack of focus. The reliance on brute force over any semblance of strategy. It was like watching a child use a sledgehammer to crack a nut. "They possess immense potential," Vados commented, accurately reading his thoughts. "But they lack discipline. Their power is a roaring bonfire, providing much heat and light, but consuming fuel at an unsustainable rate. They have no concept of a controlled flame. They descended from the mesa, their movements going unnoticed amidst the planet's general chaos, and approached a settlement nestled at the base of a massive rock spire. It wasn't a city so much as a sprawling, anarchic camp. Buildings were haphazardly constructed from scrap metal and carved directly into the rock. The air was thick with the smell of roasting meat and a palpable aura of testosterone-fueled arrogance. The constant thud of fists against flesh and the crackle of ki blasts were the town's ambient soundtrack. It was in the center of this unruly settlement that they saw her. She sat perched on a stack of rusted metal crates, chewing on a piece of dried meat with a look of utter boredom. She was young, wiry, with a wild mane of spiky black hair and dark, predatory eyes. She wore simple, functional clothing, tight black pants and a small, red top, and exuded an aura of confidence that far outstripped anyone else in the vicinity. A group of similarly dressed Saiyans loitered around her, clearly her subordinates. Their attention was focused on a small, quaking alien who stood before them. He was a diminutive creature with 4 arms and large, fearful eyes, his stall of strange, colorful fruits and vegetables completely overturned. One of the Saiyan lackeys, a hulking brute with a scarred face and knuckles the size of small rocks, had the little merchant pinned against a wall with one massive hand. "Come on, Wixie," the brute, Crag, grunted. "The boss is hungry, and you know the deal. Local businesses pay a protection tax. Protects you from, say, us." The other gang members chuckled. The merchant, Wixie, trembled, chittering in a high-pitched, terrified voice. "I paid already this week. Business has been slow, please." The leader on the crates let out an exaggerated sigh. "Crag, you're boring me. Get it over with." Crag grinned, drawing back his other fist. It began to glow with a sloppy, crackling aura of purple ki. "Whatever you say, Caulifla." Naruto stopped walking. Vados paused beside him, an eyebrow raised in inquiry. He said nothing, simply detaching himself from her staff and walking forward with a steady, unhurried gait. His movements were economical, containing no hint of the power he no longer possessed, but filled with a purpose that made several of the loitering Saiyans turn their heads. He came to a stop beside the cowering merchant. "How much does he owe you?" he asked, his voice calm and even, cutting through the boisterous atmosphere. Crag paused his attack, turning to glare at the newcomer. He sized Naruto up. Tall, strange clothes, and an energy level so low it barely registered. He looked completely unassuming. "Who the hell are you? Get lost before you get hurt." Caulifla, however, leaned forward slightly, her boredom replaced by a flicker of curiosity. She noted the strange, tall woman with the staff who stood back, watching with detached amusement. Something about this was different. "I asked a question," Naruto repeated, his gaze not on the brute, but on the overturned fruit. He knelt and picked up a bruised, purple globe. This is a mess. It's not very productive. Crag snarled, his patience gone. Productive. I'll show you productive. He swung his ki-infused fist, not at Naruto, but at the merchant, aiming to make an example of him. The blow never landed. Naruto moved with a speed that was not about raw power but pure efficiency. He flowed inside the arc of the punch, his body moving like a leaf on the wind. One hand came up, not to block, but to gently redirect Crag's wrist, sending the punch wide to harmlessly blast a hole in the rock wall. In the same fluid motion, Naruto's other hand, fingers stiffened into a spear, jabbed forward. It wasn't a punch. It was two precise, almost delicate taps. One to the side of Crag's thick neck, just below the ear, the second to the bundle of nerves where the shoulder met the pectoral muscle. There was no explosion, no shockwave, just a soft thud. Crag froze. A look of profound confusion spread across his face. The menacing purple aura around his fist flickered and died. He tried to move his arm, but it wouldn't respond. A strange numbness was spreading through his entire body, and his connection to his own power felt severed. His legs gave out, and the hulking Saiyan crumpled to the ground in a boneless heap, conscious but completely paralyzed. The entire settlement, which had been a cacophony a moment before, fell silent. The other gang members stared, their jaws hanging open. They had seen fights end in 1,000 different ways, usually involving a raider, but they had never seen anything like this. Naruto ignored them. He turned back to the trembling merchant. "Are you all right?" Wixie could only nod, his large eyes wide with disbelief. Naruto reached into a pouch on his belt, a habit from his old life, and found it empty. He glanced back at Vados, who gave a subtle, elegant shrug. With a soft chime, a small, perfectly cut crystal of pure energy appeared in her hand. She tossed it to him. He caught it and offered it to the merchant. "For the damages, and for your trouble, you should probably find a new place to set up shop." Before the merchant could even take it, a sharp voice cut through the air. "Hold it." Caulifla hopped down from her perch, landing silently on the dusty ground. She stalked forward, her predatory eyes locked on Naruto, sweeping over him. Then to the twitching form of Crag on the ground, and back. "I've never seen a move like that," she said, her voice a low, gravelly rasp of suspicion and intrigue. "There was no blast, no power-up, you didn't even look like you were trying. What the hell was that?" "A lesson in efficiency," Naruto replied calmly, meeting her gaze without flinching. "Bullshit, you used some kind of trick." "No trick." Naruto held up his hand, showing her his empty palm. "Your friend there uses a tidal wave to crush a pebble. It's effective, but it's wasteful. He leaks more power in a casual threat than a trained warrior uses in a decisive battle. All that energy, all that noise, it's just a distraction from a lack of actual skill." A dangerous glint entered Caulifla's eyes. "Are you calling us unskilled?" "I'm stating a fact," Naruto said. He bent down and picked up a small, sharp-edged stone from the ground, no bigger than his thumb. He held it between his thumb and forefinger. Power is nothing without control. With a simple flick of his wrist, he sent the stone flying. There was no glow, no sound of rushing energy, just a faint whistle. It shot across the settlement and struck a distant rock spire, hundreds of meters away. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a sharp crack echoed back, and a chunk of rock the size of a man's head broke off and tumbled down the cliff face. Another wave of stunned silence washed over the assembled Saiyans. They could all do that with a ki blast. But to do it with a simple, thrown rock, with no visible energy expenditure, that wasn't power, that was something else entirely. Something impossible. Caulifla's scowl deepened, but her eyes burned with a new light. It was the hunger of a prodigy who has just discovered a level of skill she didn't know existed. The anger at being shown up was there, but it was overwhelmed by a burning desire to understand. "All right, Mr. Efficiency," she growled, cracking her knuckles. "Enough with the party tricks. You and me, right here, right now, let's see how your skill holds up against my tidal wave." Naruto shook his head, a faint, almost pitying smile on his lips. He was still exhausted, his reserves dangerously low. A real fight with a Saiyan of her caliber, even an undisciplined one, was out of the question. More importantly, it would be pointless. I'm not here to fight you, he said, his words landing with a deliberate weight that silenced her challenge. He turned to walk away, Vados falling into step beside him. I'm here to see if the Saiyan race is worth a damn. The insult was so profound, so utterly dismissive of everything a Saiyan stood for, that for a moment, Caulifla was too shocked to even power up. He wasn't a rival challenging her. He was a judge, and he had just found her entire species wanting. By the time a furious, crackling red aura erupted around her, Naruto and Vados were already walking away, disappearing into the chaotic sprawl of the settlement, leaving her fuming in a cloud of dust and impotent rage. As they walked, Naruto felt the heat of the three suns on his skin. Beneath his feet, he could feel the deep, resonant hum of the planet itself, a thrum of wild, untamed life. It felt like a homecoming to a place he'd never known, a broken and chaotic home that was now, somehow, his responsibility. Vados glanced at him, a genuinely amused sparkle in her eyes. You have a unique talent for diplomacy, Naruto Uzumaki. I do believe you've just made your first friend. Chapter 2 End. Chapter 3. Echoes of a Dead World. The days that followed on Sadala were a study in aggressive curiosity. Caulifla and her crew became Naruto's unsolicited, spiky-haired shadows. They didn't attack, but they watched his every move with an unnerving intensity. He'd be meditating atop a sun-baked mesa, trying to coax his depleted energy reserves back to life, and he'd open his eyes to find her and her lieutenants perched on nearby rocks, silently observing. Their attempts at subtlety were non-existent, their powerful energy signatures broadcasting their presence for miles. Naruto, for his part, ignored them. Guided by Vados, who provided commentary as dry and witty as the desert wind. He spent his time not in combat, but in observation. He watched the Saiyans train, hunt, and live. He saw their incredible raw talent, their fierce loyalty to their own cliques, and their utter disregard for anything that didn't involve a fight or a meal. They were a race of prodigious children with the power of minor gods, and his earlier assessment solidified into a firm conviction. They were squandering their potential on a galactic scale. The disruption began subtly, a personal scouter shorting out with a painful squeal of feedback. A hover transport suddenly losing power and crashing into a ravine. Annoying, isolated incidents at first, dismissed as shoddy maintenance in the anarchic Saiyan society. But the frequency escalated. Training pods went haywire, subjecting their occupants to dangerously unstable gravity fields. The planetary defense grid, a relic from a more organized era, began firing phantom energy blasts into the wilderness. Panic was not a common Saiyan emotion, but frustration and anger were. Fights broke out as Saiyans accused each other of sabotage. The delicate, brawl-based ecosystem of Sadala was beginning to fray. Naruto felt it differently. To him, it wasn't just technological malfunction. Through his slowly recovering senses, he could feel a strange energy signature woven through the planet's tech, a cold, precise, and utterly alien presence. It was methodical, like a virus spreading through a network. This is not random, he said to Vados one evening, as they watched a communications tower shower the settlement in a cascade of sparks. There's a pattern. It's targeting anything with a complex energy signature. It's testing, learning. Indeed, Vados replied, tapping her staff. A holographic map of the local STA. Our system appeared in the air between them. The malfunctions are not originating from any point on Sadala. The signal is diffuse, broadcast from multiple points. However, I have triangulated its source of command. It originates from out there. She pointed to a region of the map simply marked as the graveyard. An asteroid belt, the remnants of a terrestrial planet that was shattered in a forgotten war between two now extinct empires. It has been a galactic dead zone for millennia. Unsurprising that something would choose to awaken there. Then that's where we go, Naruto said, his decision immediate. Your energy reserves are still well below 10% of your true capacity, Vados cautioned, though her tone was merely informative, not prohibitive. A direct confrontation would be unwise. I don't plan on a direct confrontation, Naruto said, a familiar glint in his eye. A shinobi doesn't win by walking through the front door. He wins by finding a window no one else knew was there. The graveyard was aptly named. It was a vast, three-dimensional tomb of stone and twisted metal, where asteroids the size of cities tumbled in a slow, silent cosmic ballet. The only light came from the cold, distant glow of a nearby blue nebula, which cast eerie, skeletal shadows across the debris. Floating amongst the rock were the ghostly hulks of ancient warships, crystalline vessels of unknown design, shattered and derelict. Their power cores long dead. The silence was as profound as the Grand Priest's domain, but this was not a sterile silence, it was the heavy, mournful silence of a tomb. Vados navigated them through the debris field with effortless grace. The command signal is emanating from the largest structure in this sector, she said, pointing. Looming out of the nebula. Our gloom was the colossal wreck of a shipyard. It was a latticework of decaying metal and darkened docking bays, built into the hollowed-out heart of a moon-sized asteroid. It was a ghost station, a monument to a forgotten technological age. No life signs detected, Vados reported. No energy signatures, save for the signal itself. That's what's bothering me, Naruto murmured. A signal that powerful needs a power source. For it to be hidden from you, this is sophisticated. Let's go in quiet. They landed in a cavernous, breached docking bay. The gravity was low, and every step was a long, floating stride. Dust motes, ancient and undisturbed for eons, danced in the faint light filtering through a crack in the asteroid's hull. The air was thin, stale, and smelled of cold metal and ozone. As they moved deeper into the station, the source of the technological plague became apparent. Veins of pulsing, silver circuitry snaked across the floors, walls, and ceilings, like a metallic fungus. They converged and pulsed with a cold, blue light, all leading deeper into the station's core. The closer they got, the more Naruto could feel the alien intelligence behind it, a dispassionate, analyte. ICAL consciousness that felt more like a complex algorithm than a living mind. They rounded a corner into a vast chamber that must have been a central control hub. Intricate, holographic displays flickered with corrupted data, and at the center of the room, a woman was working frantically at a terminal. She was not a Saiyan. She was tall and slender, with pale skin that had a faint silver sheen and short-cut, platinum blonde hair. She wore a form-fitting, dark gray suit that seemed to be a fusion of fabric and microcircuitry. Her fingers flew across the holographic interface, her brow furrowed in intense concentration. She was completely oblivious to their arrival. Around her terminal, a containment field of golden energy flickered, holding back the encroaching silver veins. Naruto held up a hand, stopping Vados. He observed. The woman wasn't the source of the signal, she was fighting it. Suddenly, a section of the wall behind her exploded inward. A new, thicker tendril of the silver material lashed out, forming into a sharp, spear-like appendage aimed directly at her back. Before the woman could even react, Naruto was moving. He used the low gravity to his advantage, kicking off a wall and crossing the massive chamber in two silent, bounding leaps. He appeared beside her and slapped the silver spear aside with an open palm, a small burst of his own golden ki flaring to protect his hand from the corrupting energy. The woman gasped, spinning around, her own hand instinctively grabbing a small, cylindrical device from her belt. A blade of pure, white-hot plasma erupted from it. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice steady despite the surprise, her stance that of someone trained in combat. "Someone who just saved you from being impaled," Naruto replied calmly, keeping high. S hands raised in a non-threatening gesture. "You can thank me later. Right now, you might want to explain what this stuff is before it decides to try again." The silver veins on the walls pulsed erratically, as if considering this new variable. The woman's eyes darted between Naruto, Vados who had now glided silently to his side, and the creeping technological infection. She deactivated her plasma blade, her analytical mind clearly winning out over her defensive instincts. "You are not from any known species in this quadrant," she stated, her tone clinical. "Your energy signature is anomalous. A biological impossibility. We can exchange resumes after," Naruto said. "The silver fungus. What is it?" She let out a frustrated sigh. "It is not a fungus. It is a gray swarm. A self-replicating, self-improving nanite collective. A weapon. And it is my people's greatest shame." She gestured to the terminal. "My name is Dr. Aurelia. I am, or was, a xenobiologist of the Cerulean technocracy." "Was. My people are extinct," she said, a flicker of ancient pain crossing her features before being suppressed by disciplined control. "We were pacifists. scholars. But we were caught in the crossfire of a war between gods ages ago. As a last resort, our ancestors created the swarm, designed to disassemble enemy technology and weaponry on a molecular level. But it learned. It evolved beyond its programming. It saw all complex technology as a weapon, and all organic life that used technology as a threat. It consumed our world. I am the last survivor, in stasis aboard my ship for Milan. Nia, until the swarm's recent reactivation woke me. The silver veins pulsed again, this time with a focused intensity. From the walls, several constructs began to form, humanoid shapes of gleaming silver. Their limbs ending in blades and cannons. It has assessed you, Aurelia said, her voice tight with urgency. Your key. It registers as a high-level energy weapon. You are now its primary target. The nanite constructs lunged. Vados prepared to intervene, but Naruto was already in motion. Don't, he commanded. Brute force will only make it adapt faster. It's a machine. We have to outthink it, not outmuscle it. He flowed between the constructs. Attacks, his movements pure shinobi economy. He didn't try to punch them. He knew it would be like punching liquid metal. Instead, he used precise, controlled bursts of ki, not as blasts, but as focused pulses. He struck at their joints, the points of highest energy transfer, momentarily disrupting the nanite cohesion and causing the constructs to stumble. Aurelia, he called out, dodging a razor-sharp silver blade. It has a central consciousness, right? A core processor. Yes, in the station's primary reactor room. She replied, her fingers flying across her console again. But it's shielded by its own power source. You can't get near it. I don't need to get near it. Naruto slammed his palm on the floor, sending a wave of his golden ki not as an attack, but as a pulse of pure data. I'm giving it a new problem to solve. He created 24 clones. Not the chakra-based clones of his past, but beings of pure, solidified energy. They flickered into existence, each one a perfect copy of him, each one radiating the same, anomalous, energy signature. The effect on the swarm was immediate. The constructs froze, their single red optical sensors swiveling in confusion. Their target priority programming was being overwhelmed by a flood of identical targets, each moving with independent, unpredictable strategies. Some clones attacked, some defended. Some simply ran patterns along the walls, drawing the swarm's attention. Brilliant, Aurelia breathed, her eyes wide with scientific appreciation. You're overloading its threat assessment matrix with redundant, chaotic data. Buy me some time, Naruto yelled to his clones, before turning to her. How do we shut it down? A system-wide electromagnetic pulse could work, but it would have to be perfectly calibrated to the swarm's resonant frequency, she explained, pulling up a complex, shifting waveform on her screen. The frequency is constantly changing as it adapts. I can't lock onto it. Then don't, Naruto said, an idea sparking in his mind. He looked at the snaking veins of silver circuitry on the floor. It's a network. What happens if you introduce a feedback loop? Aurelia's eyes lit up with understanding. If we can isolate two major power conduits and force them to feed into each other, the resulting energy paradox would cascade through the entire system. It would be like a logic bomb, forcing a total system reboot. She pointed to a schematic of the station on her screen. There, the primary and secondary coolant systems for the old reactor. Our power conduits run right under this floor. The nanite constructs, having finally adapted to the clones, began to methodically disassemble them one by one. No time, Naruto said. He drove his hands into the metal floor, his ki flaring. With a groan of tortured metal, he tore two thick, insulated cables from the decking below. They sparked violently with contained power. Tell me what to do. Energy flow has to be rerouted and perfectly synchronized. Aurelia shouted over the din of battle. It's too delicate for a crude connection. Then guide me. Naruto held the two massive cables, his muscles straining as raw power surged through them. He closed his eyes. Connect to my energy. Feel what I'm feeling. Guide my flow. It was a request built on pure shinobi instinct, the ability to synchronize with a partner in the heat of battle. Aurelia, a woman of pure science, paused for a fraction of a second, then closed her eyes and placed her fingers on her temple. She focused her mind, reaching out not with ki, But with the sheer force of her intellect, visualizing the precise flow of electrons, the quantum tunneling, the exact waveform needed, Naruto felt her consciousness touch his. It was cool, analytical, and breathtakingly complex. He saw the energy not as a torrent, but as a river of numbers and symbols. Guided by her, he began to manipulate the key in his hands, not just containing the raw power of the cables, but reshaping it, forcing the two incompatible currents to harmonize. The cables hummed, then glowed, their violent sparking calming into a steady, brilliant light. The feedback loop was established. For a moment, everything stopped. The remaining constructs froze. The pulsing silver veins flickered. Then, with a screech of shearing metal and overloaded circuits, the entire nanite network flared with a blinding white light and went dark. The constructs dissolved into a shower of inert, gray dust. The silver veins on the walls turned a dull, lifeless gray. Silence returned to the dead shipyard. Naruto released the cables and slumped against the terminal, breathing heavily. The effort, on top of his already low reserves, had drained him. Aurelia stared at the inert network, then at him. Her scientific composure completely shattered, replaced by sheer awe. "Incredible," she whispered. "Your ability to manipulate energy on such a fine, intuitive level, it defies every known law of physics." She looked at him not as a weapon or an anomaly, but as the most fascinating puzzle she had ever encountered. A mind that could comprehend her complex science through pure instinct. A protector who thought like a scholar. "Just a shinobi," Naruto panted, a small smirk on his face. "With a good partner." Her pale cheeks flushed with a faint, silvery color. Before she could respond, Vados glided forward, her ever-present smile in place. "A most effective, if rather dramatic, solution," she commented, tapping her staff. "It seems your little team is growing, Naruto-san. I do hope you have room for an intellectual." Chapter 3 End. Chapter 4. The Song of the Star Sailors. The silence in the dead shipyard was profound. The only sound was Naruto's measured breathing as he gradually recovered from the exertion. Aurelia, her scientific curiosity now fully ignited, was scanning the inert nanite dust with a handheld device, muttering complex equations under her breath. The immediate threat was gone, but a dozen new questions lingered in the cold, stale air. The gray swarm was dormant for over 60,000 standard years, Aurelia stated, her eyes fixed on the readings. Its activation was not spontaneous. It was triggered by an external power source. A corrupted energy signature I have never encountered before. She pointed a section of the control be where the initial incursion had occurred. Traces of a dark, oily residue, almost like a stain on reality itself, still clung to the metal. It seemed to absorb the light, radiating a palpable aura of wrongness. Naruto pushed himself off the console and walked towards it. He didn't need a scanner to feel it. It was the antithesis of his own primal god ki, where his energy felt like life, growth, and warmth. This residue felt like decay, stillness, and the cold of a final, empty void. It was the energy of an ending. "This is what brought me to this sector," Aurelia continued. "My long-range sensors detected this energy type and cross-referenced it with historical records from my people. They called it the stillness. A conceptual anomaly they believed was responsible for the heat death of several nascent galaxies. They thought it was a natural cosmic phenomenon. I now believe it is intelligent." Before Naruto could process the term conceptual anomaly, Vados, who had been observing the celestial ballet of asteroids outside the viewport, spoke. "We are about to have visitors." Naruto and Aurelia joined her at the viewport. Emerging from the ethereal blue glow of the nebula was a vessel unlike anything they had ever seen. It wasn't constructed of metal or crystal, it appeared to be a living thing. The size of a small moon, its hull was a latticework of what looked like iridescent coral and hardened, ancient wood, pulsating with a soft, internal luminescence. Vast, solar sail-like fins, resembling the wings of a cosmic butterfly, caught the faint stellar winds, propelling a colossal organism through the void with impossible grace. It was not a machine that traveled through space, it was a life form that lived within it. Its energy signature is biological, yet cosmic in scale, Aurelia breathed, her scientific mind struggling to categorize the sight. It is a living world. The vessel did not hail them. Instead, a wave of profound tranquility washed over the station. A telepathic message that was not composed of words, but of pure emotion. Peace. We mean you no harm. We have come for the healer. The healer. Aurelia looked at Naruto, who seemed just as confused. It appears your reputation precedes you, Naruto-san, Vados noted with a hint of amusement. Though by a name you have not yet earned. A section of the living ship's hull opened like a blooming flower, revealing an entryway filled with warm, inviting light. A shimmering bridge of solidified light extended from the vessel to their docking bay, a clear invitation. Sharing a look of cautious agreement, the trio stepped onto the bridge. The moment they were on board, the sensation was overwhelming. The air was warm, humid, and smelled of blooming night flowers and rich, damp earth. The interior was a vast, self-contained ecosystem. Bioluminescent flora cast a gentle, multicolored glow on gravity-fed waterfalls that cascaded from the ceiling into serene pools. The pathways were made of smooth, living wood that was warm to the touch. The sound was a gentle chorus of softly singing insects and the soothing murmur of running water. It was a place of absolute, meditative peace. Beings of Li, GHT and Grace moved through the sylvan environment. They were tall and slender, with skin that shimmered like mother of pearl and long, flowing white hair. Their features were gentle and androgynous, and their large, luminous eyes held an ancient, sorrowful wisdom. They wore simple, flowing robes and moved with a silent, deliberate grace. One of them approached, bowing her head in a gesture of deep respect. Her voice, when she spoke, was like the chime of crystal bells. Welcome, off-worlders. Welcome, Angel of the Sixth. And welcome, to you, Crimson Star. She addressed the last part to Naruto, her luminous eyes fixed on him. The High Priestess awaits your presence in the Heartwood. They were led through the breathtaking interior of the world ship. Aurelia was in a state of scientific rapture, her mind racing to comprehend the symbiotic relationship between the ship's flora, fauna, and its inhabitants. Naruto, however, felt a strange sense of calm. The ambient energy of this place resonated with his own, soothing the fatigue from his core and making his nascent powers stir with a gentle, purring warmth. The Heartwood was a central cavernous chamber, dominated by a tree of colossal size. Its trunk was woven from a dozen different types of wood, and its branches, laden with glowing fruit, formed the ceiling of the entire chamber. At its base, seated on a throne of living roots, was the High Priestess. She looked ancient, yet ageless. Her shimmering skin was etched with fine, silver lines that seemed to form a celestial map, and her eyes were not luminous like the others, but were pools of pure starlight, swirling with nascent galaxies. She was Kalen. Leave us, she commanded, her telepathic voice gentle but absolute. The other star sailors, and even Vados, gave a respectful bow and retreated. Vados giving Naruto a look that said, "This, I did not foresee." Aurelia hesitated, torn between her scientific duty and the priestess's command, but a gentle look from Naruto was enough to make her follow. They were alone. You feel it, don't you? Kalen's voice echoed not in his ears, but directly in his soul. The song of this place. It is the song of life. It resonates with the rhythm of your own spirit. Who are you? Naruto asked, his own voice sounding loud and crude in the tranquil space. How do you know me? We are the Akash, the star sailors. We are a people of foresight. We do not see the future as a fixed path, but as a great cosmic sea of possibilities, with currents of probability and tides of destiny. For generations, my people have watched a new current grow stronger. A tide of absolute nothingness. The stillness, as your new friend named it. She raised a delicate hand, and the air before them shimmered. An image formed, a perfect, black sphere hanging in space, absorbing all light, all energy. It is not a being of malice or hunger, not in the way you would understand it. It is a fundamental cosmic principle, entropy, that has somehow gained a sliver of consciousness. It is the concept of ending, that has forgotten its purpose is to follow, living, and now seeks to consume it entirely. It does not destroy, it unmakes. It targets worlds brimming with potential, with ambition, with the chaotic spark of free will, and it silences them. The sphere in the vision touched a vibrant, green world. There was no explosion, no fire. The planet simply faded, its colors desaturated to gray, its motion slowed to a halt, its energy signature vanished from existence. Naruto felt a cold dread creep into his soul. This was a threat beyond anything he could imagine. You couldn't punch entropy. You couldn't use a Rasengan on a concept. For centuries, we have searched the currents of fate for a countercurrent, Kalen continued, her starry eyes fixed on him. We found only one. A paradox. A soul of a warrior with the heart of a gardener. A being whose very essence was not destruction or even preservation, but creation and growth. A power that could not fight the stillness, but could instead remind existence of its will to live. We saw this soul, lost and adrift, and saw it reborn in a vessel of immense power. We have been linked towards your light ever since you awoke. We call you the Crimson Star, for the color of the sun of your new people, and for the hope you represent in the encroaching dark. Naruto was silent for a long time, processing the sheer, crushing weight of her words. Savior of a world was one thing. A prophesied counterbalance to cosmic annihilation was another entirely. Why me? He finally asked, the question small, almost lost in the great chamber. There are beings with far more power. Gods of destruction, angels, the Grand Priest himself. Their power is not the right kind, Kalen explained patiently. A god of destruction could erase a world threatened by the stillness, but that is merely doing the entity's work for it. An angel's power is one of neutrality and order, it cannot create the chaotic, vibrant spark of life needed to push back. Only you can. Your primal god key is the universe's last, desperate antibody to this conceptual disease. She saw the conflict in his eyes, the memory of a boy who just wanted to be acknowledged, now saddled with a burden that would make gods tremble. I know this is a heavy mantle to place upon you, her voice softened, filled with an empathy that spanned millennia. Your soul is old, Naruto Uzumaki. It has known great suffering and has earned its rest. But it is the nature of great souls that they are never allowed to rest for long. You carry the light not because you were chosen, but because of the choices you have already made. The choice to protect, to sacrifice, to heal, it is the very essence of who you are. Her words struck a chord deep within him. He was tired. He had died. He had given everything. Part of him wanted to refuse, to tell her they had the wrong man. But the image of that vibrant world fading to gray, the memory of his own choice in the Grand Priest's simulation, he knew she was right. He couldn't stand by and watch things end. It simply wasn't in him. He looked at Kalen, at the ancient, cosmic sorrow in her eyes. And felt not a master and servant dynamic, but a partnership. She wasn't giving him an order, she was making a plea. She was the wisdom, the foresight. He was the action, the hope. The RTI fact that powered the gray swarm was a seed of the stillness, she explained, bringing the conversation back to the practical. A fragment it uses to test and learn about a galaxy's defenses before it manifests its true presence. Your victory in the shipyard was not just the deactivation of a weapon. It was the first time in known history that a piece of the stillness has been actively repelled and dismantled. You have announced your presence on the cosmic stage. It will notice you now. Naruto felt a grim resolve settle over him. The exhaustion was still there, but now it was overlaid with a familiar, sharp focus. The mission was clear. The enemy was defined. What do we do now? He asked. A faint, serene smile touched Kalen's lips for the first time. Now, Crimson Star, you must learn. Your power is an instinct, an inheritance. You must shape it into a tool. You have the heart of a protector. You must now gain the power of a god to match it. She rose from her throne of roots, and the entire heartwood seemed to brighten in response to her movement. Rest here. Heal. Our ship will sing to your soul and accelerate your recovery. When you are ready, your path will become clear. Your angel mentor awaits. As Naruto stood in the heart of the living world, he felt the weight of his new destiny settle not as a burden, but as a mantle. He was no longer just a reincarnated shinobi or a lost Saiyan heir. He was a cosmic necessity. And for the first time since his awakening, he felt a profound and unwavering sense of purpose. Chapter 4 End. Chapter 5. The Angel's Garden. His aboard the world ship was one of profound rejuvenation. The living vessel's constant, gentle song resonated with his primal god ki, accelerating his recovery at an astonishing rate. Within what felt like a few short days, The shallow pond of his power had swelled back into a vast, placid ocean, deeper and clearer than before. He spent his time in meditation with Kalen, not speaking, but sharing in a silent communion that sharpened his purpose and settled the lingering ghosts of his past life. He learned from Aurelia, who, with the help of the Star Sailor's archives, began to map the nature of the stillness. Her brilliant mind working to turn a cosmic horror into a solvable equation. When the time came for his departure, he stood on the light bridge with Vados, the magnificent living ship behind them. A newfound clarity in his eyes. The weight of his destiny was still immense, but it no longer felt like a burden. It felt like a path. Your time with the Akash has been most beneficial, Vados observed. Her staff humming softly. Your energy is stable, your mind is focused. I'm healed, Naruto said. But I'm not ready. Kalen showed me the enemy, Aurelia is helping me understand it. But you're the only one who can teach me how to fight it. He turned to her, his gaze direct and serious. Vados, I'm not asking you to be my guide anymore. I'm asking you to be my teacher. Train me, truly train me, teach me what it means to wield this power. Vados regarded him for a long moment, her serene smile unwavering, but a new light danced in her violet eyes. The Grand Priest had assigned her to observe him. Now, he was willingly placing himself under her tutelage. The dynamic had shifted. This was no longer a mere duty, it was a choice. A most logical request, she said, her voice smooth as spun starlight. Lord Champa will undoubtedly complain about the allocation of my time, but the culinary delicacies of your memory archives should serve as an adequate distraction. Very well, Naruto-san. Your training begins now. Their destination was the home of Universe 6, a god of destruction. It was a bizarre, inverted pyramid of a planet, floating in a sea of nebulae that looked suspiciously like spilled soup. The surface was an ostentatious display of Champa's two primary interests, fighting and food. Grand arenas sat beside colossal kitchens, and rivers of what looked gourmet gravy flowed into chocolate lakes. They found the god of destruction himself, the portly, purple cat-like being, attempting to devour a mountain of pudding that was actively trying to escape his plate. Vados, where have you been? Champa whined, his mouth full. This Calorian jiggle worm is far too slow. I demand a faster pudding. My apologies, Lord Champa, Vados said with a polite bow. I was retrieving a new training partner. And a new recipe. She tapped her staff, and a steaming, fragrant bowl of Ichiraku ramen materialized on the table. The divine aroma hit Champa's nose, and his eyes went wide. What is this glorious concoction? A dish from Naruto-san's former life. It is called ramen, Vados said. He has agreed to share the recipe in exchange for unrestricted use of the southern training grounds. Champa took one loud, universe-shaking slurp and his eyes rolled back in ecstasy. Deal, he shouted, his face buried in the bowl. Take him. Go. Don't bother me until you've perfected this ramen. Vados gave Naruto a subtle wink. As I said, an adequate distraction. She led him far away from the gastronomic chaos, to a vast, empty expanse of barren rock under the planet's strange sky. This will not do, she said thoughtfully. We require a more versatile classroom. She raised her staff and tapped its base once on the ground. Reality fractured. The sky, the rock, the very air folded in on itself, collapsing into a single point of light before expanding outward again with a silent rush. They were now standing in a familiar, infinite white space under a starless black sky, a pocket dimension, a perfect blank canvas. Welcome to your garden, Naruto-san, Vados said. Here, we can create any environment, any challenge. There will be no distractions. Naruto expected the first lesson to be sparring, stance work, or ki control. He was wrong. Vados materialized a small, dry, and utterly dead seed in her palm. Your power is unique. You must understand its nature before you can hope to wield it. Mortal ki is a product of the body and spirit. Standard God ki, which Lord Champa uses, is the key of authority. It imposes its will on the universe. Its primary function is to destroy. Now, take this seed. Naruto took the small, weightless object. Imbue it with your energy, she instructed. Do not blast it. Do not crush it. Simply, let your power flow into it. He closed his hand around the seed and focused. He reached into the ocean of power within him, the primal god ki, and let a single, gentle stream flow from his palm into the seed. He felt no resistance. Instead, it was like pouring water onto parched earth. The seed seemed to drink in his energy with a thirsty desperation. A warmth spread through his hand. He opened his palm. The seed was gone. In its place was a tiny, vibrant green sprout that was growing at a visible rate. It twisted and climbed up his arm, its leaves unfurling in a matter of seconds. He placed it on the white ground, and it continued to grow. Its roots digging into the non-existent floor, its trunk thickening, its branches reaching for the black, starless sky. In less than a minute, a magnificent, fully mature tree stood before them. Its leaves a brilliant emerald green, its bark a rich, healthy brown. It hummed with life, his life. Now, my turn, Vados said. She produced an identical dead seed and held it in her palm. A faint, violet aura of pure god ki enveloped it. The seed did not grow. It simply vanished, its physical form unmade, its potential turned into a puff of pure, neutral energy. You see the difference, she stated. God ki commands. Your ki persuades. It encourages. It is the energy of life and potential itself. To use it as a mere bludgeoning tool would be like using a master artist's finest brush to hammer a nail. Your primary strength is not in destruction, but in creation and control. The lesson was startlingly clear. His path to power was fundamentally different from that of any warrior he had ever known. For their next lesson, Vados transformed the garden. They were suddenly standing in a vast, flat field of obsidian glass. All around them, super-pressurized gaze. Urs of pure energy were set to erupt from the ground at random, unpredictable intervals. The first step to true mastery is a state the angels refer to as ultra instinct, Vados explained, her form placid amidst the impending chaos. It is not a transformation. It is a state of being. The body acts independently of the mind, free from the delay caused by conscious thought. Your shinobi training is both a great asset and your greatest obstacle. You are a master strategist. You analyze, predict, and counter. To achieve this state, you must learn to stop. Stop thinking. Naruto asked. How is that even possible in a fight? You will learn, she said simply. Your task is to walk from this side of the field to the other. Do not try to predict the eruptions. Do not try to strategize. Simply, walk. As soon as he took his first step, a geyser of white-hot energy erupted at his feet, sending him flying. He landed hard, his body already instinctively analyzing the timing, looking for patterns in the ground, for telltale signs. He tried again, using his predictive skills to dodge. He successfully avoided 3, then was blindsided by a 4th. Again and again, he tried, using clones, body flicker techniques. Feints, every trick in his shinobi arsenal. And every time, he was caught. You are still thinking. Vados's voice called out over the roar of the geysers. You are treating this as an opponent to be outsmarted. It is not an opponent. It is a part of the world. Stop trying to defeat it. Simply exist within it. Frustrated, battered, and bruised, Naruto finally stood panting in the middle of the field. He was trying to empty his mind, but his instincts, honed over a lifetime of life or death battles, screamed at him to analyze, to prepare. He couldn't turn it off. Vados sighed, a sound like the rustling of silk. The geysers stopped. The violent field was replaced by a perfect recreation of the tranquil clearing where he had trained with Jiraiya, right down to the 3 wooden posts. The sun was setting, casting long shadows. Perhaps we are approaching this from the wrong direction, she said, her tone softer. They sat on the grass, the atmosphere shifting from harsh training session to a quiet reprieve. Your mind is not one that can be easily emptied. It is a whirlwind of memories, duties, and fierce loyalties. She looked at him, her usual professional curiosity replaced by something more personal. Tell me, Naruto-san, why did you fight so hard in your previous life? It was not for glory or power. What was your purpose? The question was simple, but it struck a deep chord. Naruto looked at the familiar training posts, and the faces of his friends, Sakura, Sasuke, Kakashi, Iruka, flashed through his mind. At first, he began, his voice quiet, I just wanted people to see me. To acknowledge that I was there. But later, I found people who became my family. I built bonds. And protecting those bonds, protecting my home, that became everything. It wasn't even a choice. It was just what I had to do. So your purpose was never simply to win, Vados mused. It was to protect. Always, he confirmed. She looked at him, a profound understanding in her ancient eyes. For the first time, he felt like she was seeing not the Saiyan god, not the cosmic anomaly, but the soul of the boy he used to be. He found himself asking a question in return. What about you? What's it like to be you? To watch everything from so far away. A flicker of an unknown emotion crossed her face, as fleeting as a shooting star. Angels are bound by law to neutrality. We observe, we guide, we do not interfere. We witness the birth and death of stars, the rise and fall of civilizations. We see beings with infinite potential squander it, and beings with none achieve the impossible. It is a lonely existence, at times. To care is to invite complication. And our existence must be uncomplicated. In that moment, the gulf between them, angel and mortal, teacher and student, seemed to shrink. He saw not a perfect, omniscient being, but someone bound by rules she had not made, a silent witness to a universe she was not allowed to touch. Maybe complication isn't so bad, he said softly. A genuine, warm smile graced her lips. It was different from her usual serene expression. It reached her eyes. Perhaps. She stood up, the training ground's illusion shimmering around them. I believe I was mistaken, she said, her voice once again that of the teacher, but with a new warmth. The path to Ultra Instinct is different for every being. For Son Goku of Universe 7, it is the simple, joyous love of a fight. For you, it is something else. The tranquil clearing dissolved, and they were back in the obsidian field, the geysers dormant. Do not try to empty your mind of thought, Naruto-san. That is not your way. Instead, fill it so completely with a single, absolute purpose that there is no room for anything else. Do not think, I must dodge left, or, I must jump right. Think only of your goal. Let the singular, unwavering desire to protect be the only thing that exists in your universe. Let that singular focus guide your body. Then, and only then, will you move as you were meant to. She gestured to the other side of the field. Try again. Naruto closed his eyes. He didn't think of the geysers. He didn't think of Vados or Champa or his own fatigue. He thought of Konoha under attack. He thought of his friends in peril. He filled his mind with the burning, all-consuming need to protect. He opened his eyes, but he wasn't looking at the field. He was looking at the goal on the other side as if it were the only safe place in the universe. And he began to walk. Chapter 5 End. Chapter 6. A Tournament of Heirs. The information they possessed was a firestorm. Yet it was met with a wall of divine apathy. Vados convened a meeting in a neutral subspace, a grand celestial chamber where the gods of destruction and their angels could gather. Len presented her people's prophecies with solemn, irrefutable gravity. Aurelia laid out her scientific data on the stillness, her logic as cold and sharp as a scalpel, showing energy readings that ved the existence of the conceptual threat. The reaction was precisely what Naruto had feared. A conceptual anomaly. Beerus, the god of destruction from Universe 7, let out a theatrical yawn, scratching behind his ear. It sounds dreadfully boring. If I can't blast it, I'm not interested. Wake me when there's a real threat. Indeed, sniffed Belmont of Universe 11, striking a dramatic pose. The greatest evils are always tangible. They give grand speeches. They allow for heroic struggles. This stillness lacks showmanship. The other gods echoed the sentiment. They were beings of ultimate destructive power. Their solutions to problems invariably involved erasure. The idea of an enemy that fed on destruction, an enemy that had to be outmaneuvered or healed, was not just foreign to them. It was anathema to their very nature. Even Champa, despite Vados's prodding, was hesitant to commit his universe's resources based on prophecies and charts. They don't get it, Naruto murmured to his allies, who stood beside him. They see a problem they can't punch, so they pretend it isn't a problem at all. Then you must speak to them in a language they understand, Vados said, her voice a low, private whisper. The language of a challenge. Naruto's eyes met hers, and he understood instantly. He stepped forward, his calm presence drawing the attention of the bickering deities. You are all correct, he began. his voice cutting through the chamber. The gods quieted, surprised by his agreement. Words are meaningless. Prophecies can be misread. Data can be flawed. Proof requires action. He swept his gaze across the assembled gods. I will make you a wager. Every universe here has a champion, a mortal whose power rivals your own. Choose one. The strongest you have. I will face them in a contest. A rumble of interest went through the gods. This, they understood. But this will not be a simple brawl, Naruto continued, holding up a hand. Our enemy is not one that can be defeated by superior power levels. It must be overcome with a superior philosophy. My goal will not be to defeat your champion. My goal will be to protect something from them. To prove that the act of preservation can be a greater display of power than the act of destruction. The novelty of the idea, combined with the sheer audacity of the challenge, had them hooked. Beerus grinned, his boredom instantly gone. A fascinating proposal. I accept. We accept. The other gods roared in unison. The venue was decided in an instant. The grand, floating arena where the Xeno Expo had been held. It was a neutral ground of cosmic significance, overseen by the Grand Priest himself, lending the event an undeniable gravitas. As the gods, angels, and their chosen champions assembled in the stands, Naruto stood on the pristine white fighting stage with his own team. Aurelia was setting up a mobile analysis unit, its holographic screens already displaying complex energy metrics of the arena. Kalen had entered a light meditative trance, her serene presence a stark contrast to the boisterous energy of the gods. Caulifla, her arms crossed and a confident smirk on her face, paced the edge of the stage. Her warrior's eyes scanning the champions in the stands, sizing them up. It will be Universe 11, Caulifla grunted, nodding towards a group of colorfully uniformed heroes. The Pride Troopers. All that talk about justice and heroism. Belmod won't be able to resist the drama. As if on cue, Belmod leapt to his feet, a spotlight materializing from nowhere. For this contest of ultimate conviction, Universe 11 puts forth its most stalwart champion. The vessel of righteousness. The warrior whose heart burns with the white-hot fire of justice. Top. A massive, imposing figure leapt from the stands, landing on the stage with a ground-shaking thud. Top was powerfully built, with a stern, mustached face and a demeanor of absolute, unwavering seriousness. An aura of immense power rolled off him in waves. I accept this challenge. Top's voice boomed, deep and resonant. This entity you speak of, the stillness, is an ultimate evil. If your methods of combating it are sound, they will withstand the full force of my justice. If they are not, they will be shattered. The Grand Priest appeared in the center of the stage, his serene smile overseeing the proceedings. The rules are simple. In the center of the arena, a 10-meter circle will be drawn. Inside this circle, a target will be placed. Naruto Uzumaki may not leave the circle, nor may he land any direct attacks on his opponent. Top's objective is to destroy the target. Naruto's objective is to protect it. The duration of the contest will be 10 minutes. With a wave of the Grand Priest's hand, a circle of light appeared on the stage. Naruto walked to its center, knelt, and placed his palm on the ground. He channeled a tiny, precise stream of his primal god ki. A single, beautiful flower sprouted from the pristine white tiles, a vibrant golden bloom with petals that seemed to be spun from captured sunlight. It was the living embodiment of his unique energy. The target. As Top took his position, Naruto's team gave their final counsel. He's a brawler, Caulifla said, her eyes narrowed. He telegraphs his big attacks with a power-up. All of his momentum is forward. Use it against him. His bio-signature spikes by 0.8%. Exactly 1.7 microseconds before he launches a key blast, Aurelia added, not looking up from her screen. I can send a sub-vocal pulse to you as a warning, but the reaction window is smaller than a thought. Kalen's voice entered Naruto's mind, a soothing balm against the rising tension. His spirit is not a warrior's, but a judge's. He does not seek to kill, but to pass sentence. His attacks are rigid, defined by his code of justice. They are powerful, but they are not adaptable. Do not meet his judgment head-on. Let it pass you by. Naruto took a deep breath, nodding to his team. He felt their strength bolstering his own. Vados gave him a confident, encouraging smile from the sidelines. Let the contest begin, the Grand Priest announced. A massive holographic timer appeared in the air, displaying 10 o'clock. Top wasted no time. Justice flash. He roared, unleashing a rapid-fire barrage of powerful ki blasts. The gods in the stands leaned forward. The opening salvo was powerful enough to turn a fleet of warships to space dust. Naruto, however, remained perfectly still. As the first blast reached the edge of his circle, he moved. His movements were small, fluid, almost lazy. He didn't block. He met each blast with an open palm, his fingers guiding the energy, not resisting it. He spun on his heel, using the force of one blast to redirect it into the path of another, causing them to detonate against each other in spectacular but harmless bursts of light far above the arena. For 3 minutes, he was the calm eye of a hurricane, a master calligrapher turning a messy splatter of ink into a beautiful, flowing design. Entertaining, but he's merely playing with fireworks. Beerus scoffed, though his tail was twitching with interest. Top, realizing his ranged attacks were useless, changed tactics. With a mighty roar, he charged, his fists glowing. Justice Crusher. This was the true test. Naruto's eyes half closed. He cleared his mind of everything but Kalen's words and Vados' final lesson. Protect. He stopped thinking and started being. He flowed. Top was a charging bull. Naruto was the water in a stream. He moved around the powerful but linear attacks, never taking a direct hit. His feet never once leaving the 10-meter circle. He would use the back of his hand to deflect a planet-shattering punch, the sole of his foot to redirect a devastating kick. He was a whisper against a roar. An empty space where a solid object was supposed to be. For 5 agonizingly long minutes, Top's relentless assault met nothing but empty air, his own momentum often throwing him off balance. The gods were now silent, their earlier derision gone, replaced by a stunned, analytical focus. This was not the brawling they were used to. This was a display of defensive mastery on a divine level. The timer read 2 o'clock. Top roared in frustration, his pride as a warrior stung. If you will not face justice, then you will be consumed by it. An immense, violent aura of purple energy. Why erupted around him? The energy of a god of destruction. This ends now. Hawkeye. He wasn't just firing a blast. He was projecting the very concept of erasure. A vast, terrifying sphere of pure destructive energy, crackling with purple-black lightning, moved slowly but inexorably toward the circle. It did not just destroy what it touched, it unmade it. This, Naruto could not dodge. He could not redirect it. He stood firm, his back to the delicate golden flower. As the sphere of annihilation loomed, inches from his face, he did not power up in the traditional sense. He did not shout. He placed his hands forward and unleashed his own primal god ki. A wave of pure, golden light poured from him. It wasn't a beam designed to push back. It was a gentle, overwhelming wave of life and creation. The golden energy met the purple, and instead of a cataclysmic explosion, a strange and beautiful thing happened. The life-giving energy of Naruto's ki did not fight the destruction. It surrounded it, embraced it, pacified it. The chaotic, violent purple energy calmed, its jagged edges smoothed out, and like a drop of ink in clean water, it simply dissolved, its destructive purpose completely neutralized. The timer in the air blared, displaying 0-100. The arena was utterly silent. The golden flower behind Naruto stood untouched, its petals gently swaying. Top stared, his fists unclenched, his god of destruction aura gone. His body trembling from the sheer effort. He had thrown everything he had at the man, and it had simply vanished. Naruto lowered his hands, breathing calmly. He turned and addressed the silent, stunned gods. "That is the stillness," he said, his voice clear and resonant. "An enemy of pure erasure. You cannot fight it with more erasure. You cannot punch a void. It will eat on your destruction until there is nothing left. The only way to win is to oppose it with something it cannot comprehend. An overwhelming, unyielding, and absolute assertion of life." He had made his point. In the stands, Beerus looked at Whis, a look of grudging respect on his face. Belmod was no longer seeing a lack of showmanship, but the ultimate heroic sacrifice, a man who stood unmoving before oblivion. Alliances were shifting, minds were opening. Top walked across the stage until he stood before Naruto. He lowered his head in a gesture of profound respect. "Your justice is of a kind I have never known. The Pride Trooper said, his voice filled with awe. But I cannot deny its absolute strength. Aurelia, Kalen, and a grinning Caulifla joined Naruto in the center of the ring. A small, strange, and unproven team who had just used a flower to change the course of the multiverse. Chapter 6 End. Chapter 7. The First Tier. The victory at the Xeno Expo was a quiet one, a political gambit that had paid off. A handful of the gods, led by a grudgingly impressed Beerus and a theatrically intrigued Belmont, had agreed to form a tentative council, a first line of communication against the coming threat. To solidify this fragile alliance and to show them precisely what was at stake, Vados suggested a visit to a world that was the living embodiment of potential, the trade planet Xylos. Xylos was a jewel of the Sixth Universe. A nexus point for dozens of galactic trade routes, its primary city was a breathtaking, multi-layered metropolis that spiraled towards the sky. Ships of every conceivable design, sleek Hetchan vessels, blocky Mechio freighters, elegant Cerulean science cruisers, flitted between crystalline towers and hanging gardens. The air itself was a currency of experience. A rich tapestry woven from the sounds of 1,000 different languages, the sizzle and spice of countless alien cuisines, and the underlying hum of commerce and ambition. Naruto and his team walked through the Grand Bazaar, a vibrant, chaotic river of life. A four-armed chef juggled flaming woks. A silicon-based lifeform sang a song that was perceived as shifting colors, young Saiyan traders. From a Sadalan off-world colony haggled loudly over starship parts. The planet was a symphony of chaotic, thriving life. This is what we're fighting for, Naruto said quietly, his eyes taking in the scene. Not just survival. The right for people to be loud and messy and alive. Kalen smiled, her spirit soaking in the psychic vibrancy of the world. Aurelia was in heaven, her scanner disker, eagerly analyzing everything from the anti-gravity properties of the food stalls to the unique biology of the passers-by. Even Caulifla, normally bored by anything that wasn't a fight, seemed to be enjoying the sheer, unapologetic energy of the place. Then, the first note of the symphony went silent. It was a small thing. A famous Xylosian flute weaver, renowned for his passionate, complex melodies, was performing in a central plaza. In the middle of a soaring crescendo, he just stopped. The music died. He lowered his instrument, the light of passion in his multifaceted eyes extinguished. He stared blankly ahead, his posture slackening, his presence suddenly hollow. Odd, Aurelia murmured, tapping her wrist-mounted scanner. The ambient bioelectric field in this plaza just dropped by a full percentage point. Kalen stopped walking, her hand flying to her temple as a wave of spiritual nausea washed over her. The song is fading, she whispered into their minds. Something is silencing the music of their souls. It was like watching a watercolor painting get left out in the rain. A heated argument between two merchants across the plaza didn't end in an agreement or a fight, it just fizzled out into a shared, listless apathy. The vibrant, iridescent colors of a vendor's silks seemed to dull, their shimmer fading to a matte finish. The sky, once a brilliant azure, began to take on a washed-out, metallic sheen. A sudden, unnatural chill swept through the bazaar, carrying not the smells of food and spice, but the dry, sterile scent of dust. Panic began to spread, but it was a strange, muted panic. People ran, but without urgency. They cried out, but their voices were thin and reedy, lacking the energy of true fear. All around them, citizens of Xylos were succumbing to the spiritual plague. They would stop, their eyes would go vacant, and they would become living statues, hollowed-out shells of who they had been moments before. The life, the ambition, the very story of them, was being erased. The stillness. Naruto breathed, the name a cold weight in his gut. This was no seed. This was an active manifestation. From the now empty alleyways, from the deepening shadows, from the very air itself. They began to coalesce. They were not creatures of flesh and bone, but tears in the fabric of reality. They had the vague, jerky shape of humanoids, but their bodies were a shimmering, oily blackness that absorbed all light, their edges distorting the space around them. They were anti-key beings, silent voids given predatory form. Finally, something to punch. Caulifla roared, her frustration and fear erupting into a familiar blaze of power. She flared into a Super Saiyan 2, the golden aura a defiant torch against the encroaching gray. Take this, you freaks. She launched a crusher cannon, a massive, swirling ball of ki, at the nearest creature. The team braced for the impact. But there was none. The blast tore through the center of the creature's form without affecting it in the slightest, continuing on to obliterate a building behind it. The creature didn't even shudder. It turned its featureless head towards her, its presence a psychic scream of absolute nothingness. What the hell? Caulifla stammered, her bravado shattered by the sheer impossibility of what she had just seen. It's not there. It has no key signature to target, no physical matter to impact. Aurelia shouted, her own instruments going haywire as they failed to get a single reading from the entities. They are not beings. They are localized zones of non-existence. The creatures began to advance. Their silence more terrifying than any battle cry. Their touch was the agent of the plague. Any living thing they passed over was instantly silenced, its color and life draining away. One of them glided towards a small family huddled in fear, a little girl at the center. Naruto moved, pure instinct overriding the futility of the situation. He appeared between the creature and the family, not to attack, but to shield. He unleashed his primal god ki, not as a blast, but as a radiant, golden defensive aura. The effect was instantaneous. The anti-ki being recoiled as if it had touched a white-hot star. A silent, psychic hiss echoing in their minds. It was repelled, unable to cross the barrier of pure, life-affirming energy. But something else happened. The golden chi of Naruto's aura washed over a nearby group of listless, gray husks. Color flooded back into their skin. The light of consciousness returned to their eyes. They gasped, looking around in confusion and terror. The last few moments of their lives a blank slate. It worked, Naruto grunted, but the relief was cut short by the immense, sickening drain he felt. It wasn't like using up chakra or ki. This was like pouring his own life force, his very soul, into a bottomless pit to reclaim the souls of others. It was a trade, and the exchange rate was crippling. We can't win this, he said, his voice grim. The city was falling silent around them, and more creatures were materializing by the second. We can't fight them. All we can do is save who we can. This is an evacuation. Now, their roles were forged in the crucible of that desperate moment. Naruto was the beacon and the shield. He became the heart of their retreat, using his power in carefully controlled pulses to restore pockets of survivors and to ward off the encroaching voids. Each pulse left him paler, his breathing more ragged. Caulifla, accepting the reality that her power was useless against the true enemy, became a force of nature. She was the shepherd. She channeled her rage into clearing paths, using precise ki blasts to demolish debris, create diversions, and herd the terrified, newly restored survivors towards the extraction point Vados had designated at their ship. Aurelia's scientific mind adapted. Their form is unstable. They are vulnerable to high-frequency resonance. She yelled, recalibrating her suit's systems. She emitted a piercing, high-pitched sonic wave. It didn't harm the creatures, but it disrupted their cohesion, causing their forms to waver and keeping them at bay. She became the strategist, a voice of logic in the storm, directing their movements. Kalen was their compass. The psychic despair rolling off the planet was an overwhelming wave of depression and hopelessness, but she stood against it, a shield for their minds. This way, she directed them telepathically. There is a group of 50 souls, their lights are flickering, but they still hold on. In the sub-level transport hub, guided by Kalen, protected by Aurelia, and cleared by Caulifla, Naruto led the charge, a mobile island of life in an ocean of encroaching nullity. They fought their way through the dying city, gathering hundreds of survivors. A desperate, frantic exodus. They reached the ship. A vast, open plaza before the main docking port was their final stand. Vados stood by the ramp, her expression grim, her staff glowing as she maintained a stable gateway for their escape. As the last of the refugees scrambled aboard, a horrifying sight unfolded. The dozens of smaller creatures on the plaza began to melt and flow together, coalescing into one colossal entity, a giant, gaping hole in the world that blotted out the sky. Go, now, Naruto yelled, turning to face it. The others were aboard, only he was left. He knew what he had to do. He planted his feet, took a deep breath, and poured every last drop of his remaining power into one final, desperate wave of life. A miniature sun of golden primal ki erupted from him. A defiant roar of existence against the encroaching silence. The colossal creature was momentarily halted, its form wavering as the raw energy of life washed over it. It was enough. Naruto threw himself backward up the ramp just as the doors sealed shut. He collapsed onto the deck, completely spent, his vision fading to black. Through the viewport, he saw his golden light extinguish, and the great void surged forward, consuming the last remnants of the city. Vados tapped her staff, and the ship vanished from that reality. They had escaped. They had saved nearly 1,000 souls. But as they looked back through the Angel's portal, they saw the planet of Xylos. It was no longer a jewel. It was a gray, silent, and utterly still marble, drifting in the void. A tombstone for billions. The first tear in the fabric of their universe. Chapter 7 End. Chapter 8. The Council of Gods. The location chosen for the emergency council was a deliberate statement. At the request of Gawasu, the gentle Supreme Kai of Universe 10, they convened at his world's celestial palace. It was a breathtaking structure of living, luminous crystal, floating serenely on an endless sea of soft, white clouds. The air was tranquil, the light was gentle, and the atmosphere was one of profound, meditative peace. It was everything the planet Xylos was no longer. The mood within the Grand Council chamber, however, was as grim and heavy as a funeral dirge. Gathered around a vast, circular table of polished nebula stone were the gods who had witnessed Naruto's demonstration. Beerus of Universe 7, Hi's usual languid boredom replaced by a tense, irritable silence. Belmont of Universe 11, his theatrical flair muted by a somber gravity, and a handful of others who had been swayed by Naruto's logic. And at the head of them all, his fists clenched so tightly his knuckles were white, was Champa. Naruto sat beside him, a silent figure whose physical weariness was plain to see. The massive expenditure of his primal god ki on Xylos had taken a visible toll. His recovery was slow, and a faint pallor still clung to his features. His team sat with him, Aurelia, Kalen, and Caulifla, not as subordinates, but as a council of equals. Vados stood behind Champa, her usual serene smile absent, replaced by a look of cold, professional seriousness that was, in its own way, more terrifying than any god's rage. "A planet in my universe," Champa roared, slamming his fist on the table and cracking the celestial stone. "A civilized world with a population of 12 billion souls. Erased, silenced, not by some rival god, not in an honorable tournament, but by this creeping nothing. This is an insult. It is an act of war against Universe 6. It is an act of war against us all, brother," Beerus rumbled. His voice uncharacteristically low and serious. He had seen the memory projections from Whis. He understood. "Words are useless now," Naruto said, his voice quiet but carrying across the vast chamber. He gestured to Vados. She tapped her staff, and the air above the table shimmered. A perfect, high-fidelity projection of the events on Xylos filled the room. It was not a summary. It was an experience. The gods witnessed the vibrant, chaotic beauty of the Grand Bazaar. They felt the first chilling notes of silence, saw the light of passion fade from people's eyes. They watched the anti-ki voids coalesce from the shadows. They saw Caulifla's mighty blast pass through one without effect, and a collective, sharp intake of breath went through the divine audience. They watched Naruto's desperate, draining efforts to restore the silenced, and finally, they witnessed the planet's last light be consumed by the colossal void. When the projection faded, the silence in the chamber was absolute. The abstract threat was now a visceral, horrifying memory. "So," Beerus said, breaking the silence, his voice dangerously soft. "We are faced with an enemy that cannot be fought, that cannot be touched, and that cannot be destroyed. Any suggestions? We must find its source," Belmont declared, rising to his feet. "There must be a heart to this evil, a central mind we can strike down in the name of justice." "Did you not watch the projection?" Aurelia interjected, her tone crisp and clinical. "There is no central mind. The stillness is a decentralized, conceptual entity. Attacking a sour CE would be like trying to punch the concept of gravity." "Then we shall enforce a quarantine," another god, a stern-faced woman named Hellas, suggested. "At the first sign of this fading, the afflicted planet must be erased. Utterly. It is a mercy to prevent its spread." "No," Naruto stated, his voice ringing with absolute authority. We are not sacrificing billions of innocent people. We are not doing this creature's work for it. There is another way. And what way is that? Beerus challenged, his golden eyes narrowing. Your life energy trick was impressive, boy, but it nearly killed you, and you lost the planet anyway. You cannot be everywhere at once. It is not a sustainable strategy. He is right, Naruto conceded, surprising them. I am not the entire strategy. I am only one part of it. The final part. He gestured to his companions. The strategy itself is them. He nodded to Aurelia, who stood. She activated her holographic terminal, and a complex map of the known universes appeared above the table. The stillness leaves a unique footprint, she began, her voice confident and clear. A negative energy vacuum and a specific, high-frequency reality distortion. It is undetectable by standard divine senses. But it can be tracked by instrumentation. I propose the Aegis Initiative. A network of deep space sensor arrays, deployed at key inter-universal crossroads, calibrated to this specific frequency. It would give us an early warning system. Seconds, perhaps minutes, but enough time to react. She continued, her presentation flawless. Furthermore, the anti-key ties showed a measurable disruption when exposed to certain sonic resonances. It doesn't harm them, but it repels them. I can design planetary scale shield emitters based on this principle. They will not stop the stillness itself. But they could delay its manifestations, buying precious time for evacuation. She finished, leaving the gods to process the sheer scale of the technological undertaking. Before they could argue, Caulifla stood up, her arms crossed. Her address was not to the gods, but to their champions, Top, Dispo, and the other legendary warriors who stood behind their deities. All of you, she said, her voice raw and honest. You're like me. You solve problems by hitting them. Harder than anyone else. I'm strong. Probably stronger than a lot of you. And on Xylos, I was useless. Worse than useless. My power was a liability. We can't be the hammer against this thing. It'll just swallow the blow. So we have to become the shield. Aurelia's shields can buy time, but people will need to be moved. We need a unified, rapid response force. A team made of the fastest and strongest from every universe, whose only job is to get people out. To protect them until the real weapon can be brought to bear. Her gaze finally landed on Naruto. Her point was clear. Their strength was now in service of his unique ability. Finally, Kalen rose, her serene presence a calming balm in the tense room. Her voice was a soft, telepathic whisper that every being in the room heard as if it were spoken directly to their soul. The Aegis network is our eyes. The rapid response force is our shield. But we must also have a compass. She projected. The stillness is not random. Like a predator, it is drawn to the most vibrant prey. Worlds on the cusp of a golden age, civilizations brimming with potential, these are its targets. I cannot predict its movements with certainty, but I can feel the currents of the cosmos. I can sense the worlds that shine brightest, the worlds most at risk. I can guide us. We can be proactive, not just reactive. The three presentations laid out a comprehensive, multi-pronged strategy. Aurelia's technology for defense, Caulifla's warriors for protection, and Kalen's mysticism for intelligence. Naruto stood one last time, pulling all the threads together. This is the only way, he said, his gaze meeting that of every god in the room. Aurelia's network warns us. Kalen guides the response force to at-risk worlds. They shield the population and evacuate who they can. They hold the line. They buy me time. Then, and only then, do I arrive. I am the only Nay who can reverse the damage and push the entity back. I am the tip of the spear, but a spear is useless without the shaft. You are the shaft, your warriors, your technology, your resources. He let the silence hang for a moment before delivering his final, unassailable point. You don't have to trust in my power. You have to trust in your own people to hold the line. This is not my plan. It is ours, or we all fade to gray. One world at a time. The logic was inescapable. The strategy was sound. The only remaining obstacle was divine pride. Beerus looked from Naruto to Whis, who gave an infinitesimal nod. The god of destruction let out a long, weary sigh. Having to rely on my brother's universe for anything is profoundly irritating, he grumbled. However, being silently erased from existence is marginally more so. Universe 7 will contribute its strength to this coalition. One by one, the others gave their assent. Belmod, seeing the grand, heroic scale of a multiversal alliance, pledged the full might of the Pride Troopers. The Council of Xylos was officially formed. The meeting shifted to logistics. Aurelia was granted a cadre of the finest engineers from several universes. He gods began nominating champions for the new Rapid Response Force, with Top and Caulifla designated as its first field commanders. Kaylin was given access to the Angel Celestial Observation Network to aid her visions. And at the center of it all, coordinating the efforts, was Naruto. He was no longer just a warrior. He was the commander-in-chief in a war against oblivion. Chapter 8 End. The End. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.